Hello and welcome to the Stretty cast. My name is Dale O'Donnell and I'm happy to be joined by Brian Murphy for episode 196. I'm not too happy to be dwelling over United dropping more points in the Premier League after a 2-2 draw away at Bournemouth. From defensive mishaps to social media slip-ups, the mood around the dressing room appears sour. We'll be discussing that, this weekend's trip to Wembley, and not forgetting listener questions. It's your Stretty cast. Brian, another poor result, another poor performance. We're trying to hang on to this kind of bit of positivity that we have a trip to Wembley coming up, but what's going on in the league? We can't even go to Bournemouth and secure a win.
You know, like you say, we keep trying to cling on to bits of positivity, and we do for the most part. But the weekend knocked the stuffing out of me. I won't lie. That was a right gut punch. It just another game where if we go in and we just play shit football and poor performance, and almost made a bollocks of it in injury time or very late on yet again. It's tough. It's tough to watch. Tough to take the season so far the way it's been. And yeah, we have a trip to Wembley coming up, which is always an absolute bonus and massive positive, especially for match going lads who can get to the match. But Jesus Christ, that league form. I think, you know, what's really getting to me at the moment about the league is the ones that are above us are so capable of dropping points, and they have done. If we were anyway, in any shape or form, playing well and picking up points we should be picking up, we'd be right in the talking for top four and right in contention for them Champions League spots. And we're not. And we've got absolutely nobody to blame but ourselves for shitting the bed in games we shouldn't be, conceding horrific amount of points late on. I don't know. It's a tough one. If I'm going to be down and dejected about it, I can imagine the boys inside the dressing room can't be much better. But then again, I suppose I can't really affect it and they can't.
Going into this game, Ten Hag used an excuse for the result in December when we lost 3-0 against Bournemouth at Old Trafford. And he said that the players weren't mentally prepared for that one because I think we played Chelsea just a few days prior and the games were coming in quick succession at that time. But with this one, they really had no excuses. And reflecting on the game, I think it was much of the same. It was the opposition wanting more. And I look at some of our games this season against teams, especially away from home, teams we should be beating. It's often the case that you can easily observe the fact that the team we're playing against might not be as good on paper, as technically gifted, but from the sheer want of, or the sheer wanting that game more, that those 3 points or the result more, they can cross the line. That's where I look at some of these players, Brian. I don't think they're all on the same page. I think Bruno Fernandes is one that game against Liverpool in which we drew in the league a few weeks back. He didn't play particularly well, but he ran himself into the ground. I don't think the other players are on the same page. That must be the biggest battle that Ten Hag faces between now and the end of the season to get some sort of tune out of these guys.
What raises the biggest question for me is go back to that cup game against Liverpool. I mean, granted, we didn't play extremely well, but they put in a fucking shift. Like they put in a real shift, and they rose their game when they possibly could. They were fighting tooth and nail. Granted, there was times that Liverpool played better than us in the game, and then the tide turned. But you know, you finished the game and you were like, why can't we do that in other games? Why do we save that for Liverpool, and why do we not do it since?
Why are we shutting off?
Yeah, or like why do we come out after that game and the very next game play shit again and a complete different mentality in the pitch, a complete different energy, complete different atmosphere around the side, and even like from body language and it just winds me up that they can do it. They can turn it on when it's a big game against Liverpool, and they did it again in the league, turned it on again against Liverpool. But either side of them games, it's dog shit. I mean, that's not, and this is not a cop out. That's not on the manager. To a point, it's not on the manager. That's on the boys on the pitch who decided both of them days, right, today, lads, let's fucking stick together. Let's go out and stick it to these cunts. But the next game they played, the same attitude wasn't there. It wasn't evident that they were going out with the same mind frame going, right, lads, today, same as the last day, now let's go out and absolutely fight tooth and nail. Went out and they were just fucking pedestrian and it looked lazy and uninterested. And it's a mentality question. It's a mentality question in the team as much as anything else. You have to question, why are they not putting that same shift in week after week or game after game? Why are they saving themselves for games that are crucial big games? Every game we've played since those are crucial big games in the league for our league position and to decide our destiny for the rest of the season. But yet we're limping over the line to shitty draws and VAR decisions saving our arse the weekend and a last minute penalty, dropping points left, right, and centre late on. It's frustrating, and it really is. It's become, as much of the season we've gone through the season, we've been picking points, going right. This is the game we turn it around, or if we win this game now, or get a little run going. But time has run out. That time is gone. I mean, there is no more kickstarting the season. There is no putting a run together. We've come to a stage of the season where it's just miserable, and it, it's gone to that time again where we face another end of season with the likes of Palace and Brighton, which always seems to happen in these dead rubber end of seasons. Going to these places for shit games, which don't really matter, but yet, whether they matter or not, you expect the boys to turn up and put a fucking shift in and try and get 3 points, regardless of personal pride, even at risk.
With that personal pride, I think that's been non-existent all season, because if they can't show up in games in which they're clinging on for Champions League qualification potentially, they're not going to be arsed when that's out the window, which could happen very, very soon. So that's where, when we're talking about the FA Cup semi-final, the sheer significance of that being potentially the saviour, it is the only way we can really salvage something this season is with an FA Cup run, because the league is just petering out now, it seems, and it's horrible, really, because so we can count so many seasons in the last 10 where it just feels like it's ended far too prematurely, and we're already looking forward to next season. And I don't like that when there's still football to play, because, as you mentioned, some of these games then, it means nothing, but you're going into these games that mean nothing with players that seem to lack the want to gain pride, any pride for themselves.
Kind of a timeline where you can almost see us. We're in Europe. We make a shit of that. We drop off an attitude. That section is gone. That part of the season is fucked. Then we go on a bit further, and the league is falling away. We're not going to compete for the league. That's gone out of the way. That objective is gone. Move a bit further along. All of a sudden, top four is looking dodgy, and it just looks like at each stage that we falter, the attitude and the effort seems to drop off to correspond with it. And as we get closer to that stage of the season where it is a dead rubber, we're acting like it and we're playing like it, which is, it's really poor to see. It's a really poor outlook on the side that that's the way they're representing the club. I mean, I know we're fans and I know we're passionate and we'd do anything to get 30 seconds on the bench, but like, these lads are representing this club and that crest. Jesus Christ, like, I mean, they're privileged. Whether they know that or not, they are privileged to be playing for a club of this size or to have that in their CV in their career. But to go out and stroll around the pitch and just do just pathetic effort, it really fucking annoys me. It really does. But I don't know what do you change or what way it goes. But it's sad to see that another season, as you just said, another season is petering out to being a thing about nothing again. It's poor.
We obviously had the exciting Willie Kambala starting consecutive matches for the first time, and a lot of the focus will go on, of course, his mistake, which led to was a Solanke's goal. Look, you just hope that the right environment is around him, that he can bounce back from that. But you just feel that with social media, and we're going to talk about that again shortly, you just feel for a kid when that kind of happens, because you just fear the worst, that these morons are going to be jumping on his case on social media. And that's the world we live in.
No, even before we delve any further into this, you're on about the right environment around him when he makes a mistake. He's after coming off the back of a performance against Liverpool where everyone was lauding him and giving him great credit. He's a kid that came in as fifth or sixth choice centre back, had a great game. He made a mistake in the game where he's backing up to it's his second start in a row, whatever way you want to put it. Fair enough, he made a mistake, yeah, and he did. He got roasted. No one came. No one came from our side and walked over to him when he fucked up, put the arm around him and said, "Willie, don't worry, lad. Get the head up, stay in it now, get the head right and keep going. We're all with you. We know you're new to the team. These things are going to happen. Drive on." A bit of motivation, a bit of fucking support, a bit of having each other's back. Not one of them came near him, which is so fucking bad to see. I mean, you expect Harry Maguire to come over and put an arm around his shoulder and say, "Hi, chin up, lad, chin up. Happens to the best of us." Like, he's a kid. At the end of the day, he's a young lad coming in. I don't know what he's going to turn out to be. Is he going to turn out to be a brilliant centre back or not? But he came into a cauldron against Liverpool, stood tall, and I loved it when he put in tackles and he turned around to the crowd and he was like fucking giving it. He was like, yeah, come on, brilliant. And I saw clips, like obviously he starts getting a bit more promotion on social media and whatnot. I saw clips about him. All he's ever wanted to do was play for Man United, and he just seems like a lovely, respectful young lad with a great head on his shoulders. He made a mistake and he got fucking spit roasted for it on social media instantly by his own fans. No such thing as taking a step back saying, lads, take a deep breath. This is a kid coming into a massively high pressure situation in a season where we're playing absolutely shite. And he made a mistake. It's going to happen. Of course he made a mistake. Don't tell me one top defender that hasn't made a fuck up in his early career, the start of his career. He's not. I can relate it back. Again, this is a total tangent. Relate it back to the darts. Luke Littler came on the darts there at Christmas, and there was a commentary done after it. And one of the top darts players said, do you remember whatever this guy's name was a couple of years ago came in and he got destroyed by social media and by the press and he just disappeared off the scene? That's what you're doing to a young fella like that. You're putting him in a situation where you can literally destroy his confidence and knock him back so far that he doesn't fulfill his potential because you haven't given him a fucking chance. Surely be to God, the least and the minimum you can expect or ask of your own fan base is have your back. Whatever about opposition, whatever about rivals going for him tooth and nail, which is going to happen, we should protect our own. It's our fucking duty as United fans to protect academy lads that come through. And if they have a bad game or they make a fuck up, you stand with them, shoulder to shoulder. You don't fucking nail them to the cross and destroy them. So I amusingly tweeted after the Liverpool game that I was coming out and saying I love Willie. I still love Willie, and I hope he has a great end of season, and I hope he can put a couple of performances together to change people's mind again. But don't go for him straight away.
We have to go back to '98 and after the whole fallout with England and Beckham and the way United fans stood by Beckham. The fan base, it appears, we have got social media now, and I do think at times there's quite a difference to what you see on social media and what you see at matches. We're just lacking that real sense of being united, getting behind your own. You mentioned Willie making a mistake, and people so quick to jump on him after one game, forgetting how good he was against Liverpool. Different world.
Beckham came back from that with some of the most disgusting criticism and shit thrown at him. And we turned around and it was us versus them. That's exactly what he felt. I mean, he's made comment to it. It was us versus them. It was us against the world. He's ours. We will back him to the fucking last. Where's that attitude gone? Like, especially for a kid coming through from the academy. Jesus, I know Beckham was a good player at that time, brilliant player, and he was, I suppose, look, it was easier to back him because he was going to perform. But like, if you're not going to back someone coming into the side as a kid, fresh out of the academy, hang up the boots, lads, because it's pathetic. It really is. For me, it's pathetic to see United fans throwing a fella to the wolves after 2 games. Nah, it's not the way I like to do things at all.
No, and sadly, it's the same way with even new signings at times. But look, we live in a world where people kind of expect when you get into that United first team, you've got to hit the ground running. We've seen it at the start of the season, I think, with Onana. I think Onana has improved since then. It just shows you that it doesn't all happen with the click of a finger. I still don't think Onana is where he wants to be. I think he'll get even better, but it's all part of a transition. Brian, we spoke a little bit about the mentality of these players. I kind of briefly credited Bruno Fernandes as a player that really goes over and beyond for the cause. He might not always be pulling the right passes and accurately at least, but he always puts in 110% effort. It can't be said for everyone else. However, on a different mentality side of the conversation, we had some more players in the dressing room jump into social media over the weekend after the game. We had 2 players post pictures of themselves immediately after full time with I have something to say emoji, but I'm not going to say it. Alejandro Garnacho and Amad Diallo. Garnacho also liked 2 tweets from a YouTuber who, I repeat, does not support Manchester United, stating that Garnacho was thrown under the bus by Eric Ten Hag. Totally irresponsible stuff. And it doesn't look good. Brian, what were your immediate thoughts seeing some of it? We'll add some context, of course, in our conversation. What were your immediate thoughts of seeing Garnacho fall for, I don't know what way to put it, pantomime bullshit?
my instant and immediate thought was that spells trouble for Eric Ten Hag. If they feel comfortable enough to do that, they're not too worried about the repercussions. That's my instant gut feeling. They don't think it's going to harm them if they go and do something silly like that. It's the modern world. It's gone to a stage where players can lash out in social media, or they can take silly little jibes or whatever they're doing. I'm not saying that's what they did, but I'm just saying in general. But if any player at the football club feels that they can do something like that to any degree, it bothers me about the manager's future. Is what it is the first immediate reaction I had. Apart from that, do I like any of that? No, I don't. Look, we had a saga with Jadon Sancho that went tits up. These are obviously to a lesser extent completely, but that's the underlying thought I have behind it. Is that does that suggest that there could be trouble ahead for Ten Hag if these boys don't think that it's a bad thing to do this, or that if they're not too bothered about doing it, it's not going to fall back on them. I don't know.
Just to
It's
give a
fucking shit. Look, it's shit. It's shit to see it. It's shit to see it, obviously. And like from a perspective of the public perception of the team and the players and stuff, it's drawing more unwanted bullshit and it's feeding into the frenzy. It's giving the likes of that fucking prick Mark Goldbridge flames for his fire, which is one of the worst things you can do, because if anyone's going to latch onto something and blow it out of proportion, it's him. Like you said, took Ten Hag's comments completely out of context and made a mountain out of a molehill. But we all know what that fucker's like, so it's not anything surprising. But it's given the likes of him fuel, which makes me sick.
100%. To add an update to this, United aren't making a big deal out of it. They said that Ten Hag today has spoken to Garnacho about it. It's been dealt privately. They didn't comment on whether he'll be punished in any way. But I do think ultimately, like, this happened similar with Sancho. And I've said on the podcast in recent weeks that Garnacho is now our star, and he is our star. But there's no doubt in my mind that he completely crossed the line here. Completely crossed the line. You mentioned you fear for the manager when you see these things happen. You do fear for the manager if he's weak in response. And he wasn't weak in his response to Jadon Sancho. And just because Garnacho is the star, I still think he needs to be strong on it and stand by what he thinks is right to do. I don't care how good Garnacho is coming up to this FA Cup semi-final. I think if the manager thinks he needs to take him out of the team as a bit of punishment, by all means do it, because I definitely feel he crossed the line.
He feels he needs to make that statement, and I don't disagree with you whatsoever, because we spent 10 years of player power and the dressing room being in charge of the club as such. If he feels that's what's required, yeah, go for it 100%. It is what it is. He took Rashford out of the team and he made a point with him twice, I think. Yeah, no, like, look, no man is bigger than the club. No player is bigger than the club. We've seen that all through the years, and Sir Alex Ferguson was a big believer in that. If that's what has to be done, it has to be done. But these boys need to be taught. After mentioning Sir Alex, go back to his time. We dealt with shit in house. Things went wrong. It was in house until the likes of Roy Keane went public and lambasted his fucking teammates on that interview at the time. Anything that went wrong was in house. Manager protected everybody, and he dealt with it as sternly as he had to, or not, in house. The in house thing is starting to fall apart, because if you've got players taking to social media, taking digs at the manager or whatever, Jesus Christ, like that does not look good at
It's
all.
player
It's
power.
just
This is what needs to be
it's
stamped out.
100%, yeah, 100%. And I agree fully with your statement. It doesn't matter how good he is, because like you can't just make allowances because a player is good. It's not the way it is. If you can, but it won't serve you well long term, because that player know that they can do what the fuck they want and get away with it. So yeah, it's a dirty one again. It's another dodgy situation for Ten Hag.
It is a possibility also, because since Garnacho has deleted or unliked the two tweets in question, it is a possibility that Garnacho did not hear Ten Hag's press conference immediately after the game, and stupidly read Twitter instead and took that moron's word as gospel. That's just something I think may have happened, because the tweets were deleted. United said the matter is solved now. And hopefully it is. Hopefully he took a slap on the wrist, because it's not the first time Garnacho has had to take a slap on the wrist. And the last two times he got it and he came back the way you would expect a young player. So he wouldn't be the first 19-year-old or so to go home effing and blinding about his boss. I'm sure, Brian, when you were 19, there was a few mutters under your breath about your boss.
I'm sure there was, and I'm sure there's still mutters about from the lads working with me about decisions I make. But It is what it is. But doesn't this situation, doesn't it highlight? Let's take it that you're right, okay? Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Didn't see the press conference, went home, went on his phone, spotted this, and was like, "Fuck this." Does it not highlight the danger of these fucking cretins on social media? How, like, this is where a certain demographic of the fan base take in or consume their football knowledge and the highlights of what's happened and the information and the facts in inverted commas. If they're inhaling this fumes of bullshit off this crowd and their mind is being led down the garden path by these fucking frauds, like, it's a dangerous place to be. And do you know what really fucking irks me? Hands up. I have actually spoke to the club about it. I asked them straight out. Why are you pandering to these fucking knobheads? People that have built an empire on genuine negative narratives that will literally choose to go after certain players, like Marcus Rashford, who they have specifically targeted. Harry Maguire got targeted. Ollie got targeted to a level that was at just beyond belief. I'm not going to divulge what the club said, but let's just say they're perfectly happy to allow it. And that's because they want to reach that section of the fan base. So if the club is happy to trade off a bit of what do I call it? A bit of chin in the air and a bit of personal pride in how we deal with things. You can't go banning the likes of that fucking gollum-headed Luckhurst off of press conferences and taking issue with certain journalists, actual journalists, whether we like them or not. You can't take issue with them and boot them out of press conferences while allowing these other charlatans to take a pop at everyone they want to, at every stage they want to, who just want to do it to put money in their own pocket. I really would love if the club turned around and took a different outlook to it, grew a pair of bollocks and said, you know what, I don't care how many followers or fucking subscribers you have. You play the game like this and you start targeting players and the manager like this, you can fuck off and you won't be coming back. And that's exactly what they should be doing. And the most of the fan base with a fucking head in their shoulders understand that and would love that and would back it and would take massive respect in the club making that move. But
Well,
no, because they've got
just
a
to
couple.
cut in, the club don't give access to fan outlets that some independent media outlets that do the job properly as well. They prioritize the likes of the United stand in doing so because I can throw my mind back to the Carabao Cup last season and there was a few events at Carrington that took place in the lead up to those games, and United Stand were given special access to players to speak before semi-finals and finals and whatnot. And that is special access. And you look at the way they build their model, the negativity that they say they don't spread, they get maximum hits when United lose. So people can log in to see their reactions. I can tell you, when United aren't good, which has been the case for 10 years, Stretty News and fan independent publications, we suffer. We don't do well when the team isn't doing well.
Yeah, that's because we don't buy into literally targeting clicks off the back of negative bullshit. You mentioned, and it's a funny one, you mentioned the club not giving access to certain outlets. Look at Barney, look at Red News.
Precisely.
Yeah, Barney has been essentially banned from being involved in anything. Not banned, but he's been overlooked for everything for years over a silly little fucking misdemeanor for the sake of argument. But yet they're giving the likes of this fucking Goldbridge prick full access. It's not palatable. You can't swallow it unless you're a certain demographic of fan who just buys into this fucking nonsense. But again, go back to the fact of any United fan with a bit of a fucking head in their shoulders and a bit of an education on how things are supposed to be done. This isn't how you do it. This isn't how you behave. You don't just go targeting these fucking social media massive subscriber outlets. You back the likes of United We Stand and you back the likes of Red News and our fanzines and our independent voices, and you give people who actually care about the club a chance and give them a voice. You don't bend over for these fuckers that are just trying to make a few quid. I mean, anyone who's listened to United We Stand, Red News, reads either fanzine, reads Stretty newsletters, articles, there's a clear and present difference in the ethos behind these articles, in the way they're delivered, the way they're written, and the narrative slash mindset that they're done in, versus anything that you see from any of these other fucking dopes, including the latest one that I have a fucking issue with. This Planet fucking Faz Spaz fella. This guy is getting on my wick, right? This lad is sitting down saying that Eric Ten Hag has a concussion when he's making these substitutions and
A
decisions.
concussion head, he called him.
Concussion head, yeah. I'll concussion head him, the cheek of him. This fella's going around, he's literally playing the game, right? Dale, this fella is playing the game. He's done what fucking Rance and Spunk and Saeed and all them other fellas done for ages to get themselves going. He's putting himself on a pedestal on this platform by being a shock jockey, by giving these fucking outrageous comments to get people to know his name. We know your name, Planet Spaz. You're the same fella who was hanging around Old Trafford 3 hours before a game, around a bunch of kids who were getting autographs off players to tell people who was turning up on match day. Grow up, you fucking virgin, and get a fucking life. And literally just get over it. Like this bullshit on United Stand. Your man, he got a concussion. A concussion. If he's got a concussion, you've got fucking brain damage, son.
I thought the very same, listen, but even that was outrageous, and that's that video went around on social media. I'm sure people listening have seen that. It just an example of the sheer toxic waste that comes from that channel. And look, we're not going to spend too much more time talking about them because sadly they pop up a bit. You've one more things to say, Brian. Get it off your chest.
Exactly on that point, right? You look at the clips that you've seen in the last few weeks, right? We've taken a big dip in form, and all these fucking parrots are coming out talking absolute bollocks, calling all these fucking silly names to players and
It's
all this other stuff.
premeditated too. It's premeditated.
Of course, it's premeditated. It's acting, right? But these cunts are the exact people in the organisation that Manchester United Football Club are given access to players and press conferences. Someone, surely be to God, has to turn around that club and go, lads, we're fucking making a mistake here because these are not worthy of being inside the fucking ground. Simple as that.
With players, and I know there's players in the dressing room that are unhappy about that. And I'm sure any discussions that happen over this with new chiefs from Ineos or whatever, they'll be mentioning that 100%. That's a big issue for one key player who's underperforming this season. Moving on, we have some positive things to talk about. We love that semi-final in the FA Cup to look forward to, Brian. Wembley on Sunday. I can't wait. I've been waiting for this a while and not letting recent results get me down. Can the FA Cup save our season, Brian?
Well,
this is when you really whisper sweet nothings in my ear.
Probably the wrong week to do it because I'm absolutely dejected at the moment, and usually I wouldn't. I'd start romanticising and giving a Shakespearean speech about what's coming up. To be fair about it, Dale, it's all we've got left. I mean, it's not like we have anything else to really fucking pin our hopes on. Can this save our season? I think the real question that has to be asked, can this save Eric Ten Hag? Because without winning the FA Cup, and as much as we have backed him to the fucking hilt, being front and centre and front line all season, time is starting to run out for him by all accounts. I mean, it's not looking great. The writing is starting to look on the wall, especially, and I'll tell you how I know it's taken a toll. Certain, I won't name them, but certain, and one specifically, United journalists or United writers or whatever, I've seen a change in how they're discussing him. I've seen a change in how they're talking about it, and I've seen a change in going from the whole give him another year, he's the man to be, to being a lot less bravado about it and a lot more balanced, and started to accept and maybe even allow the discussion of him leaving. So the tide is definitely turning from people that I respect their opinion, which worries me for Eric Ten Hag. I don't know if you ask me straight out, Brian, does winning the FA Cup save Ten Hag's job? I honestly don't know. I don't know if it's going to be enough based on what's happened in the league. I don't know if it's going to be enough based on the recent form the last while. Again, would I keep him? Yes. And I'm sure plenty of people listening to this will say, you're fucking off your head. And I can't disagree with you. Maybe I am. I said it a couple of weeks ago. I can find 100 reasons to keep him and 100 reasons to let him go. I'm still in the same situation. I can still understand exactly why people want to get rid of him. And I'm fully on board with that. Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying and why you're saying it. But there's just this thing niggling at me, and we've said it all along. This new structure that's coming in, if he doesn't get a chance, a hit at a season under this structure, hopefully the structure is fucking amazing, by the way. I hope it is. If he doesn't get a chance at it, you're giving that chance to someone coming in new, restarting it again. And who the fuck are you bringing in? The guy in the waistcoat that can't get England over the line with the best team they've ever had? Or Graham Potter? Come on. I've
what
enough fucking
about the
nightmares.
new flavour of the month, Yavi Alonso?
Xabi Alonso is 100% right. He's a brilliant manager. Well, he's done amazing things at Bayer Leverkusen. I tweeted about this earlier. The same people, and I mean this with a heart and a half, the very same people that are sucking Xabi Alonso dry today, in 18 months' time, would want him hung from the fucking Trinity statue. It's the way it goes. 18 months, if he hasn't won the Champions League or something fucking outrageous, get him out. It's this constant cycle. When does the cycle stop? When do you just say, look, I accept we're not great at the moment, give him fucking time?
I'm going to put a defense forward, right? Just I 100% agree with everything you said. I think the writing is on the wall too, a little bit. There's definitely early signs of that, and I felt at half time during that game against Bournemouth the weekend, a few similarities were appearing to what I seen against Watford under Ollie. Not full on like for like, but it was just things that I was noticing. And I'd look at expectations. He came in, they were quite low. Overachieved massively in his first season. This season we've had our bumps, big bumps. It hasn't been good. Football has been awful. Injury crisis throughout the campaign. But there's potential now that we can have 3 finals in 2 seasons, right? So expectations when he became manager were not that we were 2 years off winning titles or competing for titles. We've had a dip. Teams above us in the league that are competing for titles have had similar dips in the last 2 or 3 years and have stood by their managers. Ten Hag, right? We're a cup team. We have to accept that, and just a click of a finger bringing in an appointment, it's not going to change that. So many of these, this dressing room needs changing, and people will draw up the comparisons now about Alonso and how quickly he turned it around that Bayer Leverkusen, at a side that was struggling, now winning Bundesliga. The Bundesliga is completely fucking different to the Premier League. You know, I know you people say, oh, Bayern dominated and whatnot. The Premier League top 7, 8 changes pretty much every fucking year. You have your team, City, running away with it most years with their biggest squad and most money and whatnot. But those teams that we're competing with, that we're in like a tug of war with every year. Last year, Brighton were involved in the mix. You know, this year, you've Aston Villa involved in the mix. It's a fucking very tough league. Right now, we're a cup team and we're getting to finals. I think there's progression in that. And we haven't got to the FA Cup final yet, and maybe I'm talking too soon, but there's definitely, I think, enough progression in to say, right, Ten Hag he's had a bit of a tough spell in his second season. United are still getting to finals. I think people are throwing the ties out of the pram too much and forgetting, are no longer accepting that injuries are a valid excuse. I've heard Gary Neville say that in the past few days about how bad we've been and that injuries are no longer an excuse. Give me a fucking break. I hear every week commentators making excuses for teams to have a few players out from one week to the other. We've been without key players for fucking months.
I've given up listening to anything Gary Neville says. I'm honestly believing that he's a fucking knobhead. He's so willing to go in the club when he feels like he wants to, and so reserved and give him credit. I mean, Jesus, Gary, you're meant to be red through and through and one of us. You know, give the odd time, back us for fuck's sake. Give us a bit of fucking credit and stand with us. Don't be so fast to fucking slate us or knock us down. But I'll put a funny one to you, Dale, right? And I think about this quite a lot. This season and last season, if you could swap them, imagine what people would be saying. If this happened last season, right? Fair enough. Had a bad season. He's just after coming in first season. Had a bad season. Got to a cup semi-final. Let's hypothetically say we get past Coventry, get to the cup final. You know, it's a shit enough season, but what do you expect? Got to a cup final, brilliant. Then last season happens. This season, Jesus, build this man a statue. He's fucking brilliant. It's the margins. We're not allowing the fella time to accept the fact that he overperformed. No, I'm not saying this to make an excuse. Everybody agreed with this. He overperformed last season. We overperformed for what we expected to see from our first season under him. We did over and above. I didn't expect last season to go the way it did. I was extremely, extremely happy with it. This season's gone to shit. We're possibly still going to have a cup final. Brilliant. But like, can people... I can understand why people are pissed off. I'm pissed off myself. I can understand why people want to change. But can you not just see, like the last season he came in and he was able to maneuver through the murky waters of Ronaldo fucking throwing the toys out with a pram, the biggest player in the world. He got through that. He's dealt with a lot of bollocks. He did that while securing Champions League qualification, winning a cup, and getting the FA Cup final. I still think the credit is still in the bank. I mean, again, I know we're making excuses from the injuries and stuff, and there is times when I turn around to myself and say, "Geez, I know we've injuries. Like, fucking, we can still do better than this." But like, I still believe that we finally have to break this fucking conveyor belt of managerial changes every 18 months. Give him time.
I've said it when the Radcliffe deal happened that the biggest problem Ten Hag faced was the uncertainty that was going to brew around his future. I think that's still very much the case. And you know what? I haven't heard anyone criticize Radcliffe or Co yet. I think people should right now. This is poor. I don't like it. Make your fucking decision up. Unless they do feel that they're going to change it at the end of the season, which, to be honest, is the only logical reason why you'd let it kind of brew. Surely, if you're going to back the manager, you can just fucking settle the scores. And I don't see really, like, there's no candidate jumping out there. Really isn't, to make that change, because anyone that's being tipped, do you think it's going to be any, like, right, put them into Ten Hag's position this season? Potter, Southgate, any of them, with the injuries we've had, do you think we'd be challenging for a title?
Not particularly, no. I don't. I really don't. And as you said, there's no one jumping off the page, and that would probably change my mind a small bit if there was a candidate there that was
Yeah,
screaming
clear.
at me, going, "This guy is
Yeah.
the man. He is fucking top of the range, unbelievable." Then I'd allow the conversation in my own head, going, "Look, it's not worked out with Eric Ten Hag. Not going to give him time. This guy is ready, waiting in the wings. He's ready and available now. I'm willing to take a punt." What we're going to do, if it does happen, we're going to take another manager on after Ten Hag has only been given 18 months. What the fuck happens if he doesn't change things and he doesn't fucking steady the ship or turn things around? Is he going to get in 18 months? So we just kept going and going
But,
and
but
going. And does it never end?
he can do better, right? He can do what Ten Hag did. He come in his first season, blow our socks off by doing better than what we expect. And then, God forbid, the following season, it's a bad one. It's a bad one,
Out.
like
Get him out. Get
What
him out.
Klopp had. Klopp had two of these,
Yeah.
2 or 3 of them. And I know he had the credit in the bank, but also Klopp, didn't he lose his first 3 finals? And didn't it take him something like 3 years to win one, or 4 years to win one? You know, I know he did eventually go on to win the Premier League and the Champions League, but I just think it's crazy when there is no one jumping out. Hey, you've got this hunger for, and I think a lot of it comes from, just before we move on and take some questions in a bit. I think a lot of this comes from Ten Hag being unpopular. I'm not talking about the dressing room, but maybe with sections of the media. He might not be the warmest to him. He might not gift them the exclusive interviews every weekend. And I just noticed in the past few weeks, especially Rio Ferdinand, who is a bit of a snake. We've known that for years. In the way he's been commenting on it, almost like he wouldn't mind a change, because if he got someone in that liked him more, he might get more access. And that's what selfish people think. I think Ten Hag is too busy for that. He's not your charismatic character that some people, obsess over, fantasize over, because they get their juicy quotes. I think Ten Hag's problem, it's not a problem as far as I'm concerned, is he's too busy. He's too focused on his job and fixing this mess for those people that, by the way, have hung up their boots, are no longer in football, are just paid to comment on it. Ten Hag is too busy.
I think you've actually raised a really, really good point, and I've never even thought about this before. But go back to Klopp, when Klopp was in his pomp as a charismatic manager with Liverpool, and I'm not saying likable by any means for me, but a hell of a lot less of a bitch than he's become. He was afforded more time and endeared by the media because he was a character, he was a personality, he was someone you could build kind of content, that we call it, around,
And
because there was something there.
Jose would say him as well before
Oh
they
yeah,
hated him. Yeah.
100%, 100%, yeah. But Klopp, yeah, so Klopp, even when he wasn't doing the best, he was still kind of a character that you could get on board and kind of say, yeah, there's something about this guy. He's got kind of a bit of a character and a bit of personality around him. Even Arteta, when Arteta wasn't doing great, he's kind of a unique, kind of a weird fucker, and he was coming out with these weird kind of things, and he was half intriguing and kind of interesting. Ten Hag is boring as fuck. Don't get me wrong. He's one boring bastard. He cycles around on a bicycle. He's not driving a Porsche. He's got the flat cap. He's very deadpan in his answers. Doesn't really buy into the media. Gives him nothing. He's a very, very straightforward, focused, serious guy. I think you might be right. I think if he was more kind of amicable and more kind of a unique character, he'd probably get more support from the media, and the likes of Sky Sports wouldn't hit him as hard because they can use him and they can make things around him and they can put these little clips together. You can't really clip fucking what's your man's name from Keeping Up Appearances, Victor Mildrew. You can't really get many clips out of him. So he doesn't help himself that way. But again, and another point about him helping himself in the media, some people slate him because he doesn't call it out. If we have a bad performance, Ten Hag comes out, and I've given up listening to what Eric Ten Hag says in press conferences because to me, I think he's playing a massive game on everyone. I think he's just playing this utter persona of
100%.
yeah.
100%.
He's taking the piss. He's just giving these massively weird answers about how good we were and stuff. And I kind of half smile sometimes, going, "He's some bastard." But people demand him to slate players and stuff, and why isn't he fucking said how shit we were? But yet he says something that was out of context taken about a player being not up to it on the weekend, and all of a sudden he's a fucking dickhead. Oh, it's scandalous. He's a wanker. He's after throwing him under the bus. You cannot demand one thing and get something 5% like what you asked and call him a wanker for it. I mean, make up your fucking mind. Does he come out in the media and absolutely lambaste him and say, "Listen, we were absolute dog shit. He was shit. He was shit. He was shit"? I'd probably get a laugh off it. I get a giggle off it, but it wouldn't be a great thing for a manager to do. He comes out and he bullshits through his teeth about how good we were, the control we had in the game. We've all seen it, Eric. We were fucking pants. He's playing a game. Don't even fall for it. He's fucking winding him up. He just doesn't. He's the most anti-media manager I've ever seen. He does not want any involvement with any one of these cunts that are waiting to throw him under the bus or waiting to fucking kill him in the media. It's amusing to watch it, but you're
I
right.
think he's very reserved in the media, and I think he's right to be.
Yeah, 100%. And if he was more of a character, he probably would get more time, but he isn't and he's not.
Before we get on to the listener questions, a bit of a question for us to discuss. Which position takes priority in the summer for you? And how many signings? Give me a number you think we need.
Jesus, I'm just back there, Ten Hag
A
for the hilt
realistic
and now I'm gonna.
number, not a Ragnick number, but a realistic number.
It's obviously something we've all thought about. And I've said, I've talked to the lads the last day at Chelsea, I think it was away. We've gone through a couple of seasons after season saying we just need 3 or 4 players to turn it around. We've got all these positions sorted. We just need 3 or 4. Just need to get that centre midfielder and that right back, and you can specifically target those 1 or 2 or 3 positions we need. I don't know, Dale. I think we're in trouble all over the fucking pitch. I mean, the goalkeeper is okay. It's all right. Left back is fucked. Right back, I think Dalot has exposed himself again as being the player that he can be at times. He can regress so quickly. He can be very good for a while. Dalot is very good. Is not very good. It's solid and it's acceptable. We need right back. We definitely need right back cover. Centre back, mess. Need help there. Midfield, nightmare. Casemiro's flying around like he's after eating fucking 20 kebabs. He's after falling off a cliff. And it's heartbreaking to see because he was so good last season and he's just gone.
Shocking.
He's gone so bad. Oh, fuck me. He's gone so bad this season. It's a massive fall from grace. And it's not like he's fucking 37 or 8 years of age, but he's waddling around like Shaw used to do a fucking couple of years ago.
But this is the thing about Brazilians, Brian. And I'm not just picking them out. Well, I am. But you look at such great players that they've produced, the Ronaldinhos, Adrianos. And when they hit to that, a lot of them, when they hit to that age of 30, they just completely, their careers, they don't care about them anymore. Now, that might be harsh on Casemiro. He may be running around the place and training and working his socks off to get back to previous levels. But from where I'm stood, it doesn't look that way.
It's not working. Again, and to continue on that question, the wings have been hit and miss. Left wing's in trouble. Rashford hasn't performed all season. Right wing, do we need cover there? Striker, this if I had something to actually pin my donkey's tail on to bitch about, it's the fact that we left ourselves with just Rasmus Højlund as our only striker for the entire season, including January, not to bring in any semblance of a backup striker, because that other fucker is sat making daisy chains on the sideline, waiting to get out there, getting his last couple of weeks' paychecks off us as much as he possibly can before he leaves in the summer. Martial has offered us nothing, and he could have fucked off already. He could have gone. We all know he could have gone. He sat there and he waited to collect every bit of that top wage that he's never again going to see, because the wages he's on now is the best it's ever going to be for him. We've had no striker. We've had to try and fucking pigeonhole lads into that position. That's hurt us. It's hurt us. And you're depending on Rasmus Højlund again, who's a kid coming in to just light the place on fire. He did for a bit, but again, he's a kid. He's not going to be that player the whole season. So we need a striker, we need midfielders, we need defenders. Dale, I don't know. We need fucking half. We need almost a squad at this stage. And I'm sick of saying our squad depth is so bad that we need backups. I don't know. Rangnick wanted heart surgery. I think we need a fucking body transplant. I don't know what's going on.
We need a lot. All right. I think priorities should be centre back, left back, need a centre midfielder and a striker. And you mentioned a right winger as well. There's a lot there. But what I do want to see this summer is sensible buys. I don't want all these 40, 50 million that we have to go splashing the cash. That's where we run into problems. We need, I think, 5 players this summer, no less, because a lot of players need shown the door and they need replacing with better players. Like, we need more depth, we need more quality. I look at that centre back department and that needs almost a complete flush out. The only ones that I'm really keeping, Brian, we might as well move on to this about centre backs and which ones we'd keep for next season that are currently there. I've got Martinez based on he's got a year to show us that he can stay fit and not spend another year injured. I've got Harry Maguire, who I think if he's happy to stay and not play week in, week out, we should keep him based on the professionalism he's shown this season, how he's bounced back from a lot of criticism and led by example, I think, at games. Not always, but he's been one of the good ones for me. I think maybe Johnny Evans for one more year, Willie Kambala, and that's it. So that means I'd be getting rid of Varane and Victor Lindelof.
No issue with Varane going. Definitely no issue with Lindelof going. Lindelof's been that player that you just haven't decided, because he's kind of all right. He's not shit. He's not brilliant. He's kind of all right and he can do a job, but he's just not good enough. Like, he's
isn't
never.
that okay if he was 19 though, Brian? You know, he's 26. That's where I'd be saying, right, move him on, because he's not going to ever become that. He's just there taking a wage, and that's exactly, I think, where we need to change some of the mentality in this dressing. We want hungry players, and you've got players that are 26 and know they're never going to be a regular in the first team. They're pointless having them there.
Yeah, they are to an extent, 100%. But I suppose you still do need that bit of cover at times. But if he's been cover for long enough, I mean, he's just not. Yeah. I suppose the ideal situation is you have cover that has a possible chance of developing into a first team regular. We've got the opposite. We've got cover that will only ever develop into cover. So that's the avenue we're going down there. So yeah, I'd fuck him off as well. I definitely fuck him off for that leather pants thing he wore one time. That was fucking ludicrous, along with the sparkly dress. There was the writing was on Dale. The writing was on the wall with them two incidences that he was never going to make the step
Well,
up. There was
we've
some
also
serious
got
questions.
Fran on the list, and he's modeling handbags for GQ magazine this week. So get these centre backs are supposed to be scary, no?
I wouldn't see. Do you remember Colin Hendry with Blackburn, with the bandage and the long hair and the blood flowing down his face, just
Yeah.
as a typical kind of a hard bastard, typical British footballer? You wouldn't see him out like the fucking Calvert Lewin wearing fucking baggy trousers and handbags and stuff. Like, what's wrong with these boys? Like, come on. Like you said, they're supposed to be hard men. Neil Ruddocks, Julian Dix, these kind of fucking lunatics. Nemanja Vidic, for fuck's sake. You see Nemanja Vidic wearing a fucking leather hot pants or a sparkly dress, would you?
Do you think Steve Bruce would look good in a pair of Balenciaga trainers?
I'd love to see Steve Bruce in a mankini. Imagine what that'd look like.
He won.
Jesus Christ. And we're after delving into blind boy boat club rare area here. We're after getting into the deep depths of the brain where we're thinking
Brain,
about
yes.
Steve Bruce in a mankini and Gary Pallister in a G-string. Come on.
We better get on to the more serious questions from our listeners. James Gorse, one of the contributors of Stretty News, asking, if we expect Ten Hag to be sacked, what direction do you think the new co-owners will take in terms of playing style and recruitment. I suppose what Garcia is suggesting here is, will they go down a similar route to Ten Hag with a systematic approach, or will they go, I don't know what way to describe this, more waistcoat with Gareth Southgate?
No, it's a clever question in the sense that you could look at it numerous ways. It's also a nightmare of a question because you can't really predict what any of us are going to do since they've just come in the door, and like we all have these hypotheticals about them. If I'm honest, I probably see him going more for a kind of a Graham Potter style, the whole British and getting it back to the basics and building a structure from start again. Garcia, I hope that this question doesn't need to be discussed any further as the year moves on, because I really do hope that Ten Hag isn't showing the door and we don't have to see what's next with a question mark over it. But it's a hard one to answer because you just don't know. You don't know what his plans are. I mean, we're all after buying into the whole Sir Jim is going to save the world and the stadium's crack and all. Everything Sir Jim has said has been brilliant, and he's preaching to the masses all these things we want to hear. But if we're realistic and honest about it, we're only hopeful. We haven't got a fucking clue. So let's hope that question doesn't need to be talked about any further.
We have a question from Patsy Logue. Great name. What do players do in training? Does no one ask why we are conceding 30 shots per game? And is it okay to continue this way? We've had terrible injuries, but the player and management, they have to take responsibility. It's time to drop a few players, or do we need to change formation because we are being outplayed in every game? There's a lot of frustration there, Brian, but these are things that you'd see brought up a lot. Why are we conceding so many shots? And what do you think is the reason for that?
Let's ask the collective of questions that are literal thoughts on most people's minds throughout the season. So, and like they're all realistic and genuine questions. What are they doing in training? I suppose, apart from giving a serious answer of tactical stuff and whatnot, seemingly they're wearing gloves and hoodies and hats, and that's not allowed anymore, according to certain people. So I think they're just taking the piss and they're playing Subbuteo and Twister or something, Patsy, to be fair. It looks like that in the pitch, but the amount of shots we're conceding, again, it's an amusing one. This stat, the shots conceded stat, has just gone to the fucking moon since Manchester United FC started conceding lots of shots. I'd never in my life thought of or discussed a shots conceded stat all my life, ever in my life, until we conceded a shitload in one game, and all of a sudden every game is, Manchester United have now conceded 17 shots and 42 corners, a new record. We know we're shit, lads. We get it. Okay, the stats are great and all that, but like, I just don't know. It's another point of United sells papers, but I don't know why it's happening. I think the midfield is opening up too much and allowing the defence to deal with it, and the defence isn't coming forward and closing down. The defence is too much of an impetus in the defence of standing back and letting people come, which opens up the chance for taking shots. Now, again, Patsy, 30 shots in a game, 25 of them will be from distance. It's a stat that can be very easily skewed. The defence backs off and these guns hit pot shots from anywhere. It goes on as a shot on off target or a shot on goal. It's not something you're worried about. It's not something Onana's scrambling for.
The only ones that I'm worried about are the ones that leave stains in the jocks, and there's only about 3 or 4 of them a week. So if we could narrow them down a bit, I would like that. But the numbers of shots, it's not one I'm too bothered about. I guess another part you touched on with the questions is with injuries, and is it time to drop players or even change formation? What I would say to that is something we've echoed for some time with Ten Hag being a systematic manager, is he's not going to change that. Other systematic managers in Premier League have done the same thing. They've suffered poor seasons as a result of injuries because they're not willing to change. And I go back to a quote from Ralph Ragnick, in which I read before he became interim manager at United, and he said he's talking about pressing, and he kind of said that, ironically, from his time at United, but he said that a woman is never half pregnant. You're either fully pregnant or you're not. And he meant that in the sense of pressing. You either fucking press or you don't press. There's no such thing as a half press or a standoff press. I think you get managers in with those systems, they're never going to walk away from that kind of ideology or philosophy or whatnot. Guardiola wouldn't. You'll never see Klopp do it. Um, that's the way they are. And these managers, systematic managers right now, are the best in football. So I think you have to bide your time. We've another question in from Jamie William. If you had 5 players to go in the summer, who would be the first 5 out the door?
Jadon Sancho, Donny van de Beek, Christian Eriksen, Anthony Martial, Kobe Manu. No, I'm only joking. The last one would probably be gone. Eriksen, Martial, Van de Beek, Sancho. They're 4 obvious ones. Do you know, if you think about it logistically, Dale, what's Casemiro got left in his contract?
I think a year after the season.
Casemiro. If you can get a transfer fee for him, Casemiro.
I'd be honest now. I agree with all 5 you've picked. The only one that you didn't mention that I would definitely be squeezing in is Varane. I think it's definitely time to call a day with him.
If I had 6, he'd be the 6th. But I think Casemiro. Well, yeah, it's a toss-up. Casemiro or Varane.
I think Casemiro has to go too. I think Casemiro has to go too. I think the two of them, the wages they're on, the level of performance, the dip in those performances. It just feels to me, right, if they were at United next season, I would start to feel maybe a bit bitter about their presence and think you're at this club where standards are lower, taking the big fucking wage, it would just start to boil at me a little bit, I think.
The reason this conversation is actually expanded is because 5 is not enough. And that's evident in the squad. Do you know what I mean? It just shows you exactly, like, I could name 4 without even taking a breath. Then I start going into the squad. Like, there are 4 players that will mean nothing to the team whatsoever. You won't miss them. They'll have no negative impact on the squad. Then you get into players that are actually in and around the squad that you can get rid of. You can start cutthroat. You can start naming players left, right, and centre. So that's why I find the question of how many players do we bring in so difficult, because there's so many players that can or could go, that if you were to actually cut or drop the hatchet and actually get rid of all of those that you hypothetically should get rid of, you're buying almost a fucking new 11. So it's a tough one, and that's why it just exemplifies why we've had to expand on the answer, because 5 literally is not enough. I mean, it's nowhere near enough, because 4 of those players are automatic out the doors. Then you get into the nuts and bolts.
We have a question which starts with, before we finish up, because this one's a bit longer. It's from Dave Needham, and he starts with, here's a question, although there's multiple thrown in. I want to read them all out because it just shows toxic environment that can surround the club, and some of the issues that kind of keep repeating themselves. So Dave asks, why is it only United that have so many prima donnas? Why is it that toxicity is running through the dressing room? Why do some players think it's acceptable to wear the same badge that the Busby Babes in the class of 92 wore with pride, only for them to tarnish what United stand for, so that they can stroke their own egos? Why do the Glazers think it's acceptable to rip out the heart and soul of United for so many years in favour of greed? Why do we find ourselves on a constant merry-go-round of changing the manager rather than the players that can continuously throw them under the bus? Why do we allow certain players to turn up when contract renewals are ongoing, or a change of manager happens, only for them to fall once again they know their bumper contract is secure? Okay, that's more than one question. I could go on, and I'm sure you can, Dave, but I enjoyed the little things you touched on in all that. That surely shows a lot of the problems that our new co-owners need to fix and address very quickly.
It's an entire podcast in one question.
Yeah.
Honest to God, like, you could literally sit back and divulge and dive into all those questions and do a 100% episode just on that question.
Do you know what? To focus on one of the questions that he's asked, because it kind of ties in with this podcast that I put to you. Why do some players think it's acceptable to wear the same badge, not exactly the same badge, but as the Busby Babes in the class of 92, only to tarnish what United stand for? Why do they think that's okay, that they're bigger than the club?
Simple answer: because they're allowed. They're allowed to get away with it. They have been for years, and they feel they can. It's a very simple answer.
And on that note, we're going to wrap it up. Brian, thanks so much for joining me. I'll be seeing you this weekend at Wembley. Of course, you can subscribe to the Stretty Cast on all podcasts and platforms, be it Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and whatnot. We've got a newsletter on Substack as well, which is available at stretty.substack.com. Manchester United News 24/7, strettynews.com. And Brian, how can they follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter at DaytrippingRed. And if you do not subscribe to this podcast, I'm going to kidnap your dog and send you updates regularly of that dog having great fun with me and make you feel really sad about yourself. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.